One day in October of 2018, 1 month into my senior year of high school, the top 10 students of our graduating senior class were announced over the loudspeaker. I was sitting in AP Calculus AB, my last class of the day, and I listened with my heart racing and my jaw clenched as I heard our principal announce the top 10 students with the highest GPAs in our graduating class. After minutes that felt like they could have been hours, I heard my name. I had done it. I was valedictorian of my senior class, and I was elated on top of the world for about the 30 minutes that it took for me to call my parents and get home and be greeted with balloons from my dad and a note of congratulations from my sister. I think more than anything, I was just relieved that it was all over. And then I had this awful sinking feeling. This was the start of a series of realizations that maybe the past 4 years of my life, the sweat, tears, and anxiety attacks, actually may have not been worth it, or just not nearly as much as I'd hoped. Where had I gone wrong along the way? From childhood, we're taught to tether our productivity levels, our grades in class, the jobs that we do, to who we are as people and our self-worth. And for those of us who tether these things too closely together, the consequences can be detrimental to our mental health. I'll be using myself as a sort of case study. So we're backtracking a bit. Since childhood, my parents instilled within my sister and I the importance of an education. Doing well in school was a big key to a bright future. And so hopefully the more work we did now meant the less we'd have to do when we got out. I'm not saying that my parents laid the foundation for the toxic and complicated relationship that I now have with work. I'm saying that as I've grown up, how I performed in a classroom defined most, if not all, of who I was. I thrived off the positive reinforcement, the external validation of good grades, awards, compliments, and so on. I was a student before anything else. The mindset that I was developing, some may know it as grind culture, hustle culture, the idea that one must work beyond their emotional, mental, and physical capacity to fulfill some definition of success in a career. And I thought that in order to do so, I had to optimize my time. Merriam-Webster dictionary defines optimize as a verb, meaning to make as perfect, functional, and effective as possible. In short, I was working like a robot, a machine, in order to strive toward what I thought would be fulfillment. But behind closed doors, I was actually really struggling. I rarely slept through the night, oftentimes skipped breakfast, sometimes skipped lunch during the school day to get more work done. I was working beyond my means and got used to taking the path of most resistance, taking classes that were really hard, but that I sometimes had no real interest in because they looked good to friends, family, and faculty, and they would look good for colleges as well. I didn't know why I did it until now, I guess, but I wasn't taking very good care of myself, and I was hoping it would be worth it in the end, if I could just hold on to this goal. Hopefully, the benefits would outweigh the costs. My junior year of high school, I experienced what I now refer to as the first serious depressive episode I had. I was taking 4 AP classes and balancing extracurriculars, a much heavier workload than I had had in the years prior. The upperclassmen at my school had told me that junior year was the last year that got factored into our class rank, our GPAs, and so to me, it mattered the most. So 16-year-old Nijha walked into fall of 2017, weary of the journey ahead. I just don't think I could have predicted how much the winter months transformed everything about me. I watched my everyday routines transform before my very eyes. I started to dread getting up for classes in the morning. I was fatigued and agitated with myself and others, and I struggled with suicidal thoughts. I didn't reach out for help as much as I should have in retrospect because I was so afraid of what friends, family, and faculty would think of me, of how their views of me would change. I was ashamed, embarrassed, but I think most of all, I was just frustrated with myself. How could I be doing so much and seemingly accomplishing so little? How could all of this be happening to me at what seemed like such a pivotal time in my academic career? Nothing made sense. I was doing all the work, or so I thought. And depression, of course, convinced me that I was the problem. I don't mean for my experience to convey that optimization, hustle culture, that these things don't have any place in my life or society at large. These things can be very necessary and useful. The grades that I got in high school made my college applications more attractive. I was able to form amicable bonds with the teachers at my school. And when I got here, I had accumulated a good amount of credits to start out my time. The issue became that this way of life that I developed became my everyday. My habits were no longer productive, they were destructive, and so I burned out year after year with no concept of rest. How I was living just wasn't sustainable. And I think that more people of today are waking up to that fact. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported in 2019 that 1 in 3 high school students had persistent feelings of hopelessness, sadness. This was the same year that I graduated from high school, and I probably didn't really realize it in the moment, but I wasn't alone at all in how I was feeling. These feelings of sadness and hopelessness are sometimes connected to depression and can oftentimes be connected to other issues that negatively impact mental health and self-esteem, like imposter syndrome, the constant feeling that one is underqualified, undeserving of great job opportunities or even healthy and worthwhile relationships, or perfectionism, which Brown University's Counseling and Psychological Services defines as a set of self-defeating thoughts and behaviors aimed at achieving excessively high, unrealistic goals. I was looking at a journal I'd kept during my senior year, and I found some recurring thoughts and feelings. Feelings of overwhelm, the fear of disappointing people, and the thought that I should be happy even though I wasn't. I wasn't alone in these feelings, but I didn't realize it at the time. And so as I moved through school, I felt that I was alone. I didn't reach out for help. I thought that becoming valedictorian would prove something. I think that my younger self was hoping to prove that I mattered. Because for so long, I thought that to be successful was to be worthy of love, of happiness and rest, of life in general. And it's taken me years to figure out that I was wrong. If anything, I'm still figuring out that I was wrong. And so I'm taking the steps. I'm learning to set boundaries between myself and the work that I do, because I have to believe that I'm enough as I am for who I am, not just the work that I do. I'm becoming more transparent with friends and family and faculty about how I'm feeling. I'm understanding that I deserve sleep. Not just because I worked hard enough to earn it in a day, but because I need and deserve it regardless of what I've done. And that handing in an assignment late, receiving a grade that I'm not happy with, doesn't make me a bad student or a bad person. The life that I've been living for so long, assignment to assignment, deadline to deadline, isn't the one I want anymore. And I'm realizing it's not too late to change that. And so redirecting to me is about choosing oneself. It's about choosing ourselves even when societal expectations, or even the little voice in our heads, tells us that we shouldn't. It's directing time and energy back to rest and recreation, rediscovering hobbies I loved as a kid that still make me very happy now. It's about spending time with family and friends, cultivating these relationships. These are the things that I want to matter most in my life, and I don't want to miss out on them anymore. This is a quote from my journal, actually. For so long, I thought that this was what I wanted, ranking number 1 in my class. And I'm realizing now that maybe this just wasn't true. I didn't want the accomplishment, I wanted the acceptance. In October of 2018 is when I found out that I ranked number 1 in my class. And in November of 2018, I turned 17 years old. At that point, it didn't feel like I would make it to my 18th birthday. And today, 2 weeks from today, I'll be turning 21. I hope that when the time arises, we all have the ability to redirect in our own ways. Because people deserve to be loved and to rest and to safeguard their well-being and sense of self without having to work so endlessly to prove it first. Thank you.